What happens when a man who callously discarded his pregnant wife for a younger model gets a front row seat to her spectacular comeback? Ethan thought he had it all. A hot new girlfriend, who he boasted looked like a movie star, and the freedom from his boring old life. He couldn't stop rubbing his ex-wife Olivia's nose in it, but he never imagined that while he was busy showing off his cheap imitation, Olivia was being quietly courted by one of the world's most elusive billionaires. Get ready for a story of ultimate revenge, where the red carpet becomes a battlefield and a scorned woman's triumph is witnessed by the entire world. Ethan Thorne was a man who collected beautiful things. His penthouse apartment in the heart of Manhattan's Soho district was a testament to his exquisite, if somewhat soulless, taste. Polished chrome and stark white leather furniture sat on a vast expanse of imported Italian marble. Abstract art by fashionable, up-and-coming artists adorned the walls, each piece a calculated investment. His watch was a Patek Philippe. His suits were exclusively Tom Ford, and his car, a sleek black Aston Martin DB11, purred with the promise of power and prestige. And then there was Isabella, his latest and most prized acquisition. Isabella Rossi was, in Ethan's own bombastic words, a real-life movie star. With her cascade of raven hair, sultry almond-shaped eyes, and a figure that seemed to have been sculpted by the gods themselves, she was the kind of woman who turned heads wherever she went. A 24-year-old aspiring actress and Instagram model with a following of moderately impressed bots and thirsty men, she was the perfect accessory for a man like Ethan. He paraded her around the city's most exclusive restaurants, a smug grin permanently etched on his face as he basked in the envious stares of other men. "Look at her," he'd say to his friends, his voice a low proprietary murmur, as Isabella preened for a selfie at their table at Balthazar. "She's got that Sophia Loren thing going on, doesn't she? A classic beauty. You can't find that anymore." His friends, a sycophantic chorus of yes-men who benefited from his generosity, would nod in enthusiastic agreement. What Ethan conveniently omitted from his triumphant narrative was the woman he had so recently discarded to make room for his new movie star, his wife of 5 years, Olivia. And she was pregnant with his child. Olivia Thorne, soon to be Olivia Parker again, was the antithesis of Isabella. Where Isabella was a dazzling firework, Olivia was a quiet, steady flame. She had a gentle beauty with warm, honey-blonde hair that she often wore in a simple, elegant chignon, and intelligent, kind eyes that seemed to see right through Ethan's carefully constructed facade. She was a talented landscape architect, a woman who found beauty in the natural world, not in the fleeting trends of fashion and fame. She had been the grounding force in Ethan's life, the one who had supported him when he was just a struggling entrepreneur with a dream. She had been his partner in every sense of the word, and he had repaid her loyalty with a betrayal so profound it had shattered her world. The day he had left her was seared into her memory like a brand. She had been 6 months pregnant, her body changing in ways that were both miraculous and terrifying. She had been planning the nursery, a room filled with light and love, a sanctuary for the child they had both so desperately wanted. He had come home from a business trip to Miami, his face a mask of cold indifference. He had told her with all the emotion of a man discussing a failed business venture that he was in love with someone else. Someone younger, someone more exciting, someone who didn't have stretch marks and morning sickness. "I need to be with someone who inspires me." "Liv," he had said, the casual shortening of her name a cruel twist of the knife. "Someone who makes me feel alive." He had already packed his bags. Her world, once a vibrant landscape of shared dreams and future hopes, had been reduced to a barren wasteland in the space of a single heartless conversation. The divorce had been swift and brutal. Ethan, ever the pragmatist, had offered her a generous settlement, a gilded cage to keep her quiet and out of his new glamorous life. He had kept the Soho penthouse, of course. Olivia had taken the money and retreated to a quiet tree-lined street in Brooklyn, to a brownstone that she had once dreamed of renovating with him. Now she would do it alone. But Ethan couldn't just leave her be. He seemed to derive a perverse pleasure from flaunting his new life in her face. He would post endless pictures of himself and Isabella on Instagram. Their lives, a curated montage of private jets, exotic vacations, and champagne-fueled parties. He'd tag her in the posts, a digital slap in the face. He'd even had the audacity to send her a Christmas card, featuring a professionally shot photo of him and Isabella, clad in matching cashmere sweaters, grinning inanely in front of a roaring fire in a ski lodge in Aspen. On the back, in his neat, arrogant script, he had written, "Wishing you a Merry Christmas. Hope you're doing well." Olivia had thrown the card in the fireplace, watching as the flames consumed their smug, perfect faces. But the hurt remained a dull, persistent ache in her chest. She was carrying his child, a constant living reminder of his betrayal, and he was living a life of consequence-free bliss with a woman who was little more than a child herself. Her friends, a fiercely protective circle of women who had known her since college, were incandescent with rage. "He's a monster." Liv, her best friend Chloe, had said, her voice trembling with anger. "A soulless, narcissistic monster. How can you be so calm?" But Olivia wasn't calm. She was drowning. The joy she should have been feeling about her impending motherhood was tainted by the bitterness of her heartbreak. She would sit in the half-finished nursery, surrounded by boxes of unassembled furniture and untouched baby clothes, and weep until she had no tears left. She felt like a ghost in her own life, a silent observer of her own slow-motion collapse. Ethan, meanwhile, was blissfully unaware of the depths of her despair. Or perhaps he was aware and simply didn't care. His world was a bubble of self-congratulation, and Olivia was a distant, unpleasant memory that he could easily dismiss. He was too busy curating his image as the man who had it all. He had even started a blog, a pretentious, self-aggrandizing platform where he pontificated on everything from investment strategies to the art of living a bespoke life. He wrote a post titled, "Trading Up Why I Chose a Life of Authenticity and Passion," that was a thinly veiled justification for leaving Olivia. He didn't mention her by name, of course. He simply referred to his previous chapter as a time of stagnation and compromise. He wrote about the importance of surrounding oneself with vibrant, inspiring people, and it was clear to anyone who knew him that he was talking about Isabella. The post went viral in their small, privileged circle. People whispered about it at dinner parties, their eyes filled with a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. Olivia's name was on everyone's lips, the wronged woman, the discarded wife. She felt the weight of their stares, the sting of their pity, every time she ventured out of her brownstone. Ethan, on the other hand, was basking in the attention. He saw himself as a maverick, a man who had dared to break free from the suffocating confines of a conventional life. He was a pioneer of personal fulfillment, a guru of self-actualization. He was also a first-class fool, and his downfall was destined to be as spectacular as his rise. But for now, he was on top of the world, his movie star girlfriend on his arm, the city at his feet. He had no idea that the woman he had so carelessly cast aside was about to rewrite her own story, and that her comeback would be more dazzling than anything he could ever have imagined. The seeds of his humiliation were being sown in the quiet tree-lined streets of Brooklyn, in the heart of a woman who was slowly, painstakingly putting the pieces of her shattered life back together. And when she was whole again, she would be a force to be reckoned with. Ethan Thorne, the man who thought he had everything, was about to lose the one thing he had never truly valued, his dignity. The first few months after Ethan left were a blur of pain and progesterone. Olivia moved through her days in a fog of grief, her pregnancy a bittersweet reminder of a future that had been stolen from her. She would wake up in the middle of the night, her hand instinctively reaching for the empty space in the bed beside her, and the reality of her aloneness would hit her with the force of a physical blow. The brownstone, which she had once envisioned as a warm and welcoming family home, felt cavernous and cold, its silence amplifying her loneliness. Her friends Chloe and another close friend, Jessica, a sharp-witted lawyer, who had handled her divorce with a ferocious tenacity, formed a protective cocoon around her. They would show up at her doorstep armed with tubs of Ben and Jerry's trashy magazines and a bottomless well of righteous indignation on her behalf. They would listen to her weep, they would rail against Ethan's cruelty, and they would gently but firmly nudge her towards the future. "You can't let him win. Win, Liv," Jessica had said one evening, her voice firm as she watched Olivia listlessly poke at a salad. "And right now, by letting yourself waste away like this, you're letting him win. You need to show him, and more importantly, you need to show yourself that your life didn't end when he walked out that door." Jessica's words, though harsh, were a necessary jolt. Olivia knew she was right. She couldn't let her grief consume her, not when she had a new life growing inside her, a life that deserved a happy, healthy mother. That night, she made a decision. She would not be a victim. She would be a survivor. The next morning, she woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. She started with the nursery. She unpacked the boxes, assembled the crib, and painted the walls a soft sunshine yellow. She hung a mobile of delicate hand-carved wooden animals above the crib, and as she watched them twirl in the gentle morning breeze, a flicker of hope ignited within her. This room was not a monument to her loss. It was a promise of a new beginning. She threw herself into her work, channeling her pain and anger into creativity. As a landscape architect, she had always found solace in the natural world, in the patient, resilient beauty of plants and trees. She took on a new project, a commission, to design a rooftop garden for a new luxury hotel in downtown Manhattan. The project was ambitious and demanding, and it was exactly what she needed. She spent her days poring over blueprints, sketching designs, and sourcing rare and exotic plants. The work was a balm to her wounded soul, a tangible way to create beauty in a world that had suddenly turned ugly. It was during a visit to a specialist nursery in upstate New York that her life took an unexpected turn. She was searching for a particular variety of Japanese maple, a rare weeping cultivar with delicate lace-like leaves. The owner of the nursery, a gruff but knowledgeable man named Mr. Henderson, told her that he had sold his last one to a private collector. "A real plant enthusiast, this fella?" Mr. Henderson had said, his voice a gravelly rumble. "Buys up all my best stock. Lives up on a massive estate on the Hudson. A real recluse, they say. Name's Sebastian Croft." The name meant nothing to Olivia. She was disappointed, but she thanked Mr. Henderson and was about to leave when a sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up to the nursery. A tall, impeccably dressed man with silvering hair and piercing blue eyes stepped out of the car. He exuded an aura of quiet authority, a man who was used to being in command of his surroundings. Mr. Henderson's face lit up. "Well, speak of the devil," he muttered to Olivia. "That's him. That's Mr. Croft." Sebastian Croft overheard him, and a faint, amused smile touched his lips. He approached them, his gaze falling on Olivia. There was an intensity in his eyes that made her feel both seen and slightly flustered. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything," he said, his voice a low, cultured baritone that sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "Not at all, Mr. Croft," Mr. Henderson said jovially. "This young lady was just inquiring about your Japanese maple." Sebastian Croft's gaze shifted back to Olivia, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. "My Japanese maple," Olivia found her voice. "Yes," she said, her tone more confident than she felt. "The Acer palmatum. Ryusen, I was hoping to use it in a project I'm designing." Sebastian Croft's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You're a landscape architect?" "Yes," she said. "Olivia Parker." He extended a hand. "Sebastian Croft. It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Parker." His handshake was firm and warm, and he held her gaze for a moment longer than was strictly necessary. They talked for over an hour, their conversation flowing as easily as the nearby stream. He was fascinated by her work, and she was captivated by his deep knowledge of botany and his passion for conservation. He told her about his estate on the Hudson, a vast property that he was slowly rewilding, returning it to its natural state. He spoke with a quiet passion that was a world away from Ethan's loud, boastful pronouncements. As they were about to part ways, he said, "I know this is forward, but I would be fascinated to see your designs for the hotel rooftop. And perhaps you might be interested in seeing my Japanese maple." Olivia was taken aback, but she found herself smiling. "I'd like that very much, Mr. Croft." "Sebastian," he corrected her gently. Their first date, as Chloe would later excitedly call it, was a visit to his estate the following weekend. It was a world away from the glitz and glamour of Manhattan. A long winding driveway led through a dense forest of ancient trees to a magnificent stone-built manor house that overlooked the Hudson River. The grounds were a breathtaking tapestry of rolling hills, wildflower meadows, and meticulously tended gardens. Sebastian gave her a tour of the property, his love for the land evident in every word he spoke. He showed her his prized Japanese maple, its delicate crimson leaves a splash of vibrant color against the lush green of the surrounding forest. He showed her his greenhouses filled with rare and exotic orchids. He showed her the apiary where he kept bees and the organic vegetable garden that supplied his kitchen. They had lunch on a sun-drenched terrace overlooking the river, a simple, delicious meal of fresh-baked bread, artisanal cheeses, and salads made with vegetables from his garden. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. She found herself opening up to him in a way she hadn't with anyone in a long time. She told him about her pregnancy, her recent divorce, and her struggle to rebuild her life. She didn't mean to the words, just tumbled out of her a torrent of pent-up pain and vulnerability. He listened patiently, his blue eyes filled with a compassion that was so genuine it brought tears to her eyes. He didn't offer platitudes or easy answers. He simply listened, and in his quiet, attentive presence she felt a sense of peace that had been absent from her life for so long. When she told him about Ethan, about his cruelty, and his constant need for validation, a flicker of something cold and hard entered his eyes. "He sounds like a very small man," he said, his voice low and firm. Olivia was startled by the fierce protectiveness in his tone. For the first time since Ethan had left, she felt a sense of safety, a feeling of being cherished. As the afternoon drew to a close, he walked her back to her car. "I hope this isn't the last time I see you, Olivia," he said, his voice soft. "It won't be," she said, and she knew in her heart that it was true. Their relationship blossomed in the weeks that followed. They would meet for long walks in Central Park, for quiet dinners at out-of-the-way restaurants where they were unlikely to be seen, and for weekends at his estate on the Hudson. He was a perfect gentleman, attentive and kind, and he treated her with a reverence that was both thrilling and slightly terrifying. She learned more about him. He was a tech billionaire, the founder of a revolutionary software company that had changed the way the world communicated. He was notoriously private, a man who shunned the spotlight and valued his anonymity. He had been a widower for 10 years, his wife having died in a tragic accident. He had never remarried, and he had poured all his energy into his work and his philanthropic endeavors. He was everything Ethan was not: kind, humble, and genuinely interested in the world around him. He was a man of substance, a man of quiet strength, and he was, to Olivia's utter astonishment, falling in love with her. He never pressured her, never pushed for more than she was ready to give. He was patient and understanding, and he seemed to know instinctively what she needed. He would show up at her brownstone with her favorite takeout, or he would send her a bouquet of her favorite flowers, peonies, with a simple handwritten note that said, "Thinking of you." One evening, as they were sitting in front of the fireplace in her living room, he took her hand. Olivia, he said, his voice soft but firm. I know this is fast, and I know you've been through a lot, but I have to tell you how I feel. I'm falling in love with you. Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes. I'm falling in love with you too, Sebastian, she whispered. He leaned in and kissed her a gentle, tender kiss that was filled with all the unspoken emotions that had been building between them. It was a kiss that promised a future she had never dared to dream of, a future filled with love and laughter and the quiet joy of a shared life. As her due date approached, Sebastian became her rock. He went with her to her prenatal appointments, he helped her finish the nursery, and he was there holding her hand when she gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby boy. She named him Leo, a name that meant lion, a symbol of the strength she had found within herself. Ethan, meanwhile, was completely oblivious to the dramatic changes in Olivia's life. He was too wrapped up in his own world, too busy flaunting his movie star girlfriend and his perfect life. He had heard through the grapevine that Olivia had given birth, and he had sent her a perfunctory text message, "Congrats. Let me know what I owe you for child support." He had no idea that Olivia was no longer the broken, lonely woman he had left behind. He had no idea that she had found a love that was deeper and more profound than anything he could ever comprehend. And he had no idea that she was about to make a spectacular entrance back into the world on the arm of a man who could buy and sell him 1,000 times over. The stage was set for a showdown, and the red carpet was about to become a battleground. Ethan Thorne was about to learn a very public and very painful lesson in humility. While Olivia was cocooned in the quiet, authentic joy of new motherhood and burgeoning love, Ethan Thorne was aggressively marketing his own happiness. His life was no longer something to be lived, but a brand to be managed, and he was its most tireless, obnoxious promoter. His Instagram was the primary vehicle for this campaign, a relentless, high-gloss stream of manufactured bliss. Each post was a carefully composed tableau designed to scream success and effortless cool. Ethan and Isabella clinking champagne flutes on a private jet to St. Bart's. The caption, a casual #work hard play, hard. The two of them in matching Fendi ski suits in a Courchevel chalet looking artfully windswept. Isabella posing with a newly acquired, eye-wateringly expensive Hermes Birkin bag on the Pont des Arts in Paris, a lovelock with their initials visible just over her shoulder. The zenith of this public relations offensive was a sprawling 8-page feature in Prestige Living, a glossy magazine whose primary function was to flatter the egos of the newly rich. The article, brazenly titled, "The Art of the Upgrade," Ethan Thorne on life, love and living authentically, was a masterclass in narcissistic revisionist history. In it, Ethan, photographed in his stark Soho penthouse, pontificated on his personal philosophy, a toxic brew of plagiarized self-help quotes and breathtaking hypocrisy. Authenticity is everything. He was quoted as saying, his face airbrushed to an uncanny smoothness beaming from the page. It means having the courage to audit your life, to identify the elements that are no longer serving your highest self, and having the strength to cut them away. It can be painful, of course. People might not understand. But you can't build a future on a foundation of compromise. The thinly veiled cruelty was staggering. He referred to his 5-year marriage not by name, but as his previous chapter, a time of comfortable stagnation and muted colors. He spoke of his new life with Isabella as an explosion of vibrancy, a return to passion. The accompanying photos were a grotesque parody of intimacy. There was Isabella, draped in a sheer silk robe, perched on the edge of their vast, uncreased bed, hand-feeding him a single perfect strawberry. There was Ethan staring thoughtfully out his floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of Macallan 25 in hand, as if contemplating the secrets of the universe rather than his stock portfolio. It was less a portrait of a relationship and more an advertisement for a life no one was actually living. The article landed like a grenade in their former social circle. Olivia's best friend Chloe was the one who broke the news, calling Olivia in a state of incandescent rage. "You will not believe this sanctimonious pig!" she shrieked down the phone, proceeding to read the most offensive passages aloud. Olivia, who was rocking a fussy milk-drunk Leo in her arms, listened in silence. The familiar acidic sting of betrayal pricked at her, but to her own surprise it was a distant sensation, a phantom limb of a pain that had mostly healed. When Chloe emailed her the link, she opened it on her laptop. She looked at the glossy, sterile images of the man she had once loved and the girl who had replaced her. They looked like two beautiful, expensive mannequins, their smiles vacant, their poses rigid. There was no life in their eyes. She looked down at the warm, snoring baby, nestled against her chest, at his tiny fist clutching her finger, and a wave of profound peace washed over her. She pressed a soft kiss to his downy head, inhaling his sweet, milky scent. This was real. This was authentic. This warm, messy, unpredictable, and deeply joyful reality was something Ethan, in his cold, curated world, would never understand. She closed the laptop, not with anger, but with a sudden, overwhelming wave of pity. He wasn't living a life. He was propping up a facade, and that had to be an exhausting, empty existence. When Sebastian visited that evening, he found the magazine open on the coffee table. He read the article in silence, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. Olivia watched him, and when he was done, he placed it down gently and looked at her, his piercing blue eyes full of a quiet, protective fire. "He's terrified," Sebastian said, his voice a low, steady rumble. "Men like that, men who need to shout their happiness from the rooftops, are the ones who have the least of it. It's a performance to convince himself, not the world. He's a very small man, Olivia, making a very loud noise to distract from his own emptiness." His words were a balm extinguishing the last embers of her hurt. He didn't just comfort her, he armed her with clarity, a new lens through which to see the man who had broken her heart. Ethan wasn't a titan to be feared, but a hollow shell to be pitied. In the months that followed, Olivia's world continued to expand as Ethan's, unbeknownst to him, began to shrink. Her rooftop garden project for the new Nomad Hotel was completed to rapturous reviews. It was a masterpiece of sustainable design, a lush urban oasis that felt both wild and serene. Her work earned her the prestigious National Landscape Design Award, a huge honor in her field. At the awards ceremony, she walked onto the stage, her pregnant form elegant in a simple, well-cut dress, and gave a brief, humble speech, thanking her team and speaking about her belief that creating green spaces in cities was an act of radical hope. The award led to a feature of her own, not in a vapid lifestyle circular, but in Architectural Digest. The photo shoot was the antithesis of Ethan's. The photographer shot in natural light, capturing Olivia, in her element, in the sun-drenched living room of her brownstone, her hands smudged with charcoal from sketching, or on the finished hotel rooftop. Her face lit with a genuine smile as she inspected a flowering vine. The article celebrated her talent, her vision, and her quiet, profound contribution to the beauty of the world. It was a dignified, powerful testament to her resilience and her craft. Her life with Sebastian deepened into the kind of partnership she had always craved. He seamlessly became a part of her and Leo's world. He was a man of immense wealth and influence, yet he found his greatest joy in the simplest things. He would lie on the floor of the brownstone for hours, his deep laughter echoing as he made silly faces at Leo. He learned to distinguish Leo's tired cry from his hungry one. He was there for the first real gummy smile, the first coo, the first time Leo rolled over. A moment they celebrated with the same hushed reverence as a major business deal. They were a family forged not by obligation, but by a deep, abiding, and quiet love. Ethan, meanwhile, was discovering that a life built on novelty has a very short shelf life. The dazzling thrill of Isabella was fading, revealing a chasm of incompatibility. Her conversations, which he had once found refreshingly simple, now seemed achingly dull. A looping track of celebrity gossip, brand names, and complaints about her Instagram algorithm. Her entire existence was performative, lived through the lens of her phone. He would try to talk to her about a new business venture or an article he'd read, and her eyes would glaze over before she'd interrupt to ask if he thought a particular filter made her look snatched. He was living with a beautiful, animated ghost. A strange, gnawing curiosity began to consume him. He started thinking about Olivia constantly. He found her new private Instagram account. A friend of a friend had let it slip. He created a fake profile to follow her. What he saw was a quiet gut punch. Her feed wasn't a performance. It was a diary. It was filled with candid, sun-drenched photos, Leo's feet impossibly tiny. Olivia laughing with dirt on her cheek from her garden. A close-up of plans for a new project. It was a life of substance, a life that felt real. He saw the photo from her awards night holding the heavy, elegant trophy, looking radiant and utterly self-possessed. Then he saw the one that stopped his breath. It was a candid shot, likely taken by a friend. Olivia and a man were sitting on a park bench, sharing a coffee. The man had his arm around her, and he was looking at her with an expression of such pure, unadulterated adoration that Ethan felt a hot, possessive surge of anger. Who the hell was this guy? His fingers flew across the keyboard. He searched her name, the awards, the hotel project. And then he found him. The man in the photo wasn't just some new boyfriend. He was Sebastian Croft. A quick, frantic search brought up a handful of old, rare articles from Forbes and the Wall Street Journal. Tech visionary, philanthropist, recluse, and a net worth with so many commas, it made Ethan's own considerable wealth look like a rounding error. The blood drained from Ethan's face. He felt a cold, sick dread pool in his stomach. He had left Olivia for an aspiring actress. He'd dressed up as a movie star, and she had quietly, without any fanfare, ended up with a man who could buy the entire movie studio, its back catalogue, and the island where they filmed. The sheer cosmic scale of his miscalculation was staggering. He saw himself not as the man who had upgraded, but as the fool who had traded a winning lottery ticket for a handful of magic beans. The final act was set in motion a few weeks later. The Met Gala, the absolute pinnacle of the social calendar, was approaching. "I'm one of the co-chairs this year," Sebastian mentioned casually one evening as they were cleaning up after dinner, Leo asleep in his bassinet nearby. "And I was hoping my partner would do me the honor of attending with me." Olivia froze, a dish towel in her hand. The thought was terrifying. The cameras, the crowds, the judgment, it was everything she had spent the last year escaping. "Oh, Seb, I don't think I can," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "That world, it's not me. I've been so happy being invisible." Sebastian came to her, taking the towel from her hands and enveloping them in his. He looked her directly in the eyes, his gaze steady and reassuring. "I know, and I wouldn't ask if it were just about a party," he said softly. "Think of it differently. This isn't about stepping back into his world. It's about you stepping into your own on your own terms. I want the world to see the woman I see every day. Not the wronged wife from the tabloids, but the brilliant, strong, beautiful artist who is creating the most incredible life. This isn't a performance, Olivia. It's a coronation. Your coronation." She looked at him, at the absolute belief in his eyes, and felt her fear begin to recede, replaced by a nascent flicker of excitement. He wasn't asking her to be an accessory. He was asking her to take her crown. "Okay." She breathed, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Okay, I'll go." The next day, she made a call to a stylist Sebastian had recommended, a legend known for creating iconic, elegant looks. As she described her vision, something graceful, powerful, and unapologetically her, she felt a sense of purpose solidifying within her. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan Thorne was pulling every string he could, calling in every favor he was owed to secure his own tickets to the gala. He finally got them, and he and Isabella immediately began planning their assault on the red carpet, plotting a coordinated look designed to get them noticed. He had no idea he was a bit player in a drama he didn't even know was being written. He was preparing for a party, while Olivia was preparing for a resurrection. The night of the Met Gala was less a party and more a controlled detonation of fame and fashion. It was a sensory assault, a glittering maelstrom on the steps of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The air itself seemed to vibrate thick with the percussive roar of hundreds of photographers, shouting the frenzied clicking of a million shutters, and the electric hum of the crowd pressed against the barricades, their cell phones held aloft like a sea of digital offerings. This year's theme, Celestial Bodies, had inspired a parade of ethereal and often outlandish creations, turning the grand staircase into a river of silk satin and starlight. It was a night for legends, not for amateurs. Into this crucible of judgment, Ethan and Isabella arrived. Their entrance was precisely as subtle as a car alarm. The rented vintage Rolls-Royce, a monstrous confection of cream and chrome, was so ostentatiously large, it had trouble navigating the turn onto the carpet, causing a momentary, embarrassing gridlock. Inside, Ethan had spent the final moments giving Isabella a frantic, whispered pep talk. Remember, chin up, look bored, indifferent, like you belong here. Don't smile too much. It looks desperate. And for God's sake, let me do the talking if anyone from Vogue approaches. Isabella, who was busy applying a final sticky layer of lip gloss in her phone's camera, simply nodded the advice washing over her, like a gentle, unheeded wave. Don't worry, baby, she'd purred. I know how to work a camera. Ethan stepped out first, a peacock in a ludicrously ill-advised tuxedo of crushed navy velvet with a satin lapel so wide it looked like a pair of wings. His bow tie, a matching velvet monstrosity, threatened to eclipse his chin. He plastered a smirk on his face, a pathetic imitation of the confident swagger he'd seen in movies, and struck a pose. Isabella emerged after him, a human disco ball poured into a skin-tight silver-sequined gown with a neckline that plunged to her navel and a slit that climbed dangerously high up her thigh. The dress was designed not to be admired, but to be noticed, a desperate scream for attention in a room full of confident whispers. They were an assault on the senses, a garish splash of new money and boundless ego. They posed together, their movements stiff, choreographed, and utterly devoid of warmth. Ethan's hand on Isabella's back looked less like an affectionate caress and more like he was maneuvering a piece of furniture into place. Isabella cycled through her three signature poses: the pout, the over-the-shoulder smolder, and the hand-on-hip pout. The veteran photographers on the line, men and women who could spot an imposter from 100 paces, took their obligatory shots with an air of weary disdain before turning their lenses away, searching for a more authentic moment, a real star. Ethan, however, was encased in a fortress of self-delusion. In his mind, the flashes were a confirmation of his status. The shouts were for him. He was the man who had it all: the movie star girlfriend, the bespoke life, a ticket to the most exclusive party on the planet. He felt a surge of triumphant glee. He scanned the crowd, his eyes hungry for recognitions, for the envious glances he was sure he was receiving. He was here. He had arrived. He had no idea he was merely the opening act for his own execution. Then a palpable shift occurred on the carpet. A quiet authority replaced the chaotic energy. The frantic shouting of the press died down, replaced by an expectant murmur. A sleek black Bentley Mulsanne, the automotive equivalent of a perfectly tailored tuxedo, pulled silently to a stop. Its presence was a statement of such profound and understated wealth that the gaudy Rolls-Royce parked ahead of it suddenly looked like a cheap toy. The chauffeur opened the door and Sebastian Croft emerged. He didn't need crushed velvet or an oversized bow tie. In a classic, exquisitely cut, Tom Ford tuxedo, he radiated a power that was both innate and absolute. He moved with an unhurried grace, a man completely at ease in his own skin and in any environment he chose to occupy. He turned, ignoring the now frantic press, and extended a hand into the car's dark interior. And then Olivia stepped out. It was not an entrance. It was an unveiling. The world seemed to hold its breath. A collective gasp rippled through the press line, a sound of pure, unadulterated awe. Olivia Parker, a woman the world had forgotten, had just become the undisputed center of the universe. She was a vision from a dream, a celestial Madonna brought to life. Her gown, a custom creation by a revered Parisian couturier, was a masterpiece of midnight blue silk chiffon that seemed to have captured the night sky itself. The fabric flowed around her, cascading in soft, ethereal layers that draped her 7-month pregnant form, not to hide it, but to celebrate it, to frame it as the miracle it was. The neckline was a graceful, off-the-shoulder sweep, and from her neck a single magnificent diamond necklace, a gift from Sebastian, rested against her collarbone, glittering like a captured constellation. Her honey-blonde hair was swept back into a low, intricate chignon, revealing the elegant line of her neck. Her face, free of the heavy makeup favored by women like Isabella, was luminous. She glowed with an inner radiance, a serene, confident joy that no cosmetic could ever replicate. She was not playing a role. She was simply magnificently herself. Sebastian's hand rested gently on the small of her back, his touch both protective and proud. He looked at her not as an accessory, but as his queen. They were a tableau of genuine love, of quiet strength, of a power so profound it didn't need to announce itself. The photographers, who had been lethargic just moments before, erupted. The sound was a deafening, continuous roar of shutters, a desperate, frenzied volley to capture an image that was already iconic. They weren't just taking a picture, they were witnessing a moment. Olivia, Olivia, look this way, Mrs. Parker, over here, beautiful. The shouts were no longer dismissive. They were reverent. Ethan stood frozen 20 feet away, the smug grin melting from his face like wax. His mind struggled to process the vision before him. It was as if he was looking at a stranger. This radiant celestial being couldn't be his Olivia, the quiet, sensible woman he had deemed burnt and uninspired. The woman he had cast aside was now the single most breathtaking creature he had ever seen. His gaze flickered from Olivia's serene magnificence to Isabella, who was now adjusting her dress, looking annoyed that the attention had shifted. In the brilliant glare of Olivia's authentic light, Isabella's sequins suddenly looked cheap. Her practiced pout seemed vulgar. Her overtly sexual dress looked desperate. He had bragged to his friends that he had traded in a sedan for a sports car. Now he saw the devastating truth. He had traded a priceless work of art for a cheap, factory-made replica. The realization was a physical blow. A wave of vertigo washed over him, and the triumphant sounds of the gala faded into a dull roar in his ears. Every cruel word he had ever said to her came rushing back, each one a fresh stab of shame. He had called her life stagnation. He had called himself a pioneer of authenticity. The hypocrisy was so vast, so profound, it threatened to swallow him whole. He and Isabella were now completely invisible, two ghosts haunting the edge of the frame. The entire world was focused on Olivia and Sebastian as they began to ascend the grand staircase. As they passed the spot where Ethan stood, paralyzed, Olivia's gaze for a single shattering second met his. He braced himself for a look of triumph, of anger, of smug satisfaction. He would have welcomed it, but it never came. Instead, her eyes held only a quiet, profound pity. It was a look that didn't say, "I told you so." It said, "I'm so sorry for you." It was the look one gives to something broken, something small and sad. And in that single, devastating glance, she stripped him of his anger, his pride, and the last vestiges of his dignity. He was not her villain. He wasn't even a footnote. He was simply an object of her compassion. That was the deepest cut of all. The rest of the evening was a masterclass in public humiliation. Inside the museum, while Olivia and Sebastian were personally greeted by Anna Wintour and escorted to the co-chair's table at the very heart of the gala, Ethan and Isabella were directed by a clipboard-wielding assistant to a table in the far-flung hinterlands of the room. It was a social Siberia, populated by reality T-stars, TikTok influencers, and the forgotten plus ones of more important people. The air at their table was thick with the desperate energy of people who knew they didn't quite belong. From his miserable vantage point, Ethan was forced to watch the main event. He saw Olivia, seated next to a legendary film director, engaged in an animated conversation, her laughter echoing softly. He saw Sebastian in a deep discussion with a tech visionary who had changed the world. They were not just attending the party, they were the party. The final nail in the coffin of his ego came during the evening's speeches. Sebastian took the stage, and the vast room fell silent. He spoke eloquently about the museum, about the power of art. Then his voice softened, and he turned his gaze directly to Olivia. Art, in its highest form, allows us to see the world anew, he said, his voice resonating with deep emotion. And tonight, I am here with the greatest artist I have ever known. My partner, Olivia Parker, who has taught me the true meaning of resilience, grace, and the transformative power of a loving heart. She has taken the broken pieces of a life and is building a masterpiece of strength and beauty. And she is creating our family's own masterpiece right now. He gestured gently towards her, a look of overwhelming love on his face. Thank you for inspiring me and the world every single day. The room erupted in a wave of heartfelt applause. Olivia's eyes shone with tears as she looked back at him. Her expression, a perfect portrait of love, returned. Ethan felt the applause like a series of physical blows. He had had that love. He had held that masterpiece in his hands, and in his blind, arrogant stupidity, he had thrown it into the fire. He risked a glance at Isabella. She had missed the entire speech. She was hunched over her phone, her face illuminated by its pale light, furiously editing a selfie she had taken of her dessert plate, her thumb swiping through filters, utterly absorbed in her own tiny digital world. He looked from her vacant expression to the radiant, beloved woman across the room. He had bragged to everyone that his mistress looked like a movie star, but his pregnant ex-wife had just become royalty, and he, Ethan Thorne, the self-proclaimed king of the upgrade, was nothing more than a court jester in the ruins of his own pathetic kingdom. And there you have it, a story of love loss and the ultimate, most satisfying revenge. Olivia's journey from a heartbroken, discarded wife to a radiant, empowered woman on the arm of a man who truly valued her is a powerful reminder that our stories are not defined by those who leave us, but by the strength we find within ourselves to rewrite our own endings. Ethan, in his blind arrogance, thought he could simply trade up, but he learned the hard way that true value isn't found in flashy appearances, but in the quiet, unshakable strength of a person's character. What did you think of Olivia's incredible transformation? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more tales of epic comebacks and karmic justice, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas that will leave you cheering. Your support helps us to continue bringing you the stories you love. Thanks for watching.